Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Mastering Retention podcast. Today, I am really excited to have Annelie Biernat with me from Wooga. We're going to be talking about making a new game. And, recently, you guys released Switchcraft, which I'm sure you've been pouring all your love and attention into for the last, how long have you been working on it?
First of all, hi, thank you for having me here. It's great to be first time on a podcast. And I'm the game director of Switchcraft, and I've been working on the game since 2019. So I started in the team just before we got the go to produce it. So I was part of the team to prepare a production pitch for the game. And yeah, I joined them as a lead product manager, and since we globally launched, I was promoted to game director, and I'm still leading the product team right now. But yeah, soon, hopefully, we get more hands on deck, and I can focus on the direction side more. But yeah, the game is fun. Like it's been such a journey with the pandemic, everything at once. Like so many challenges along the way. My last 2.5 years were definitely not boring.
That's exciting. Yeah, I mean, before we do, I always like to, ask what is your story? Like, how did you actually end up at Wooga and working on games?
So I think I was interested in games ever since I was really young. So usually gaming was a boy thing when I was a kid. So my brother had all the gears like a Commodore 64 and a Sega Mega Drive and all these things. And whenever he was not at home, I would sneak into his room and try to get to his toys and discover that. And I actually started like reading up on the books, like how do you actually use a Commodore 64? And they had some early manuals of how to build a game in it. And I just started doing that. I just started creating a game on the Commodore back then, very simple things. Later, when I was a teenager, I started doing adventure games in the Game Maker engine. So very fun, like writing some stories and trying to build them in the Game Maker tool. And yeah, I organized LAN parties with my male friends. I was always more hanging out with male friends. So I was kind of the one making sure that there are enough pizzas when we have a LAN party.
You were probably the most valuable friend in the friend group, bringing the pizza. Oh, man.
Yeah, or organizing the tournaments and make sure that we have nice rewards that are funny for the participants. So this I did already as a teenager, but I never thought that you can make a career out of games. I worked during my studies in banks, in consulting agencies, and I was so tired so fast of wearing suits and being so posh up, and like the pace of change was so slow. The tools were so old that we used. And during my studies, I actually focused on renewable energies. And right when I finished my master degree, renewable energies in Germany was almost gone. Like the industry went to Asia, to Saudi Arabic countries, or like Eastern countries. So it's not really a thing anymore, a big industry in Germany. And so I had to find another fast-paced industry. And after I got my son, I was seeing a post from Wooga asking for playtesters. I'm like, oh, well, I played games all the time anyways, so I can also test.
Might as well get paid for it, right?
And so I came to Wooga with my baby in a carrier, put him on the ground, started testing the games, and was like, this is a fun environment. I don't need to wear a suit if I can make games. So I just applied for a job as a game analyst back then in 2012. And I started in January 2013, and I started working in Hertz Peril. Yeah.
That's great. So you're one of those rare people that kind of started as like play testing and worked your way up to game director. That's awesome. Wow. And pretty fast too. So congrats on that. Cool. Well, So we're talking about something today that I think a lot of teams struggle with, which is how do I come up with a new game concept and how do I iterate on that and actually get to the point of uh, launching it globally? Because even games that make it to soft launch, I see so many like good, fun games that just get killed in the soft launch phase or even before that, for whatever reason. um, so today, I'd love to just go through your story with Switchcraft here. So yeah, take us maybe through the beginnings of the iteration process of like where Switchcraft came about. Like, were there other good solid ideas? Like how was this one iterated on, and where did you land initially?
So I can't take actually credits for anything that happened in that phase because I wasn't part of the team back then. So the team was there was a game that was already in like an early concept phase that was killed, and the team basically back then sat together and kind of thought about what are interesting market trends. Like they analyze not just games but media in general, like what are themes that are currently appearing, and they used like all sorts of inspirations, as I said, from movies, Netflix. Like they got really wildly inspired by many different types of media, books, and they would do something that's called design sprints. And again, here, I can't really talk about the details because I wasn't part of this. I could just observe it from the outside. And they really try to go through different kinds of designs and concepts and then evaluate, was this fun? Are we excited about this? Can we believe that this is something that we want to work on for the next years? Do you think this is interesting for the audience, right? So there are some themes that may also become like really too narrow, or too like you get over it very fast and you find it then maybe not that exciting anymore. So you really have to sleep several nights over like concept, a theme, an idea, and see if it really sticks with you and the team. And I think that's what they did really well back then, like understand what is like really, really interesting and how do we carry on. And then they once they were like really excited with the theme, and it was the magical school theme that sparked lots of different ideas, and they found an artist, actually like a artist who created drawings only. And this art sparked so much joy, as Marie Kondo would say. Like this piece of art really got stuck with the team, and they like using this really inspired them to come up with these fantasies that they wanted to create. And this created emotions in the team, and these emotions they were able to sell to the management team to get to the next phase. And I think early on it's really a lot about going deeper into the emotions, the feel that you create. If you talk about it, if you think about it, does it give you energy? Does it like inspire you for exploring more within this world? And I think that was what worked really well early on with this team and setup. What they didn't know was, would there be an audience? And so that's when they did like a very fast prototype. I think they did it in like 1.5 months. And they just put out this prototype and have it like a few thousand players tested. They implemented, I think there was no monetization in there, of course, but there was like different stepstones where they would send out surveys to the players already in the app. And then they used these surveys for some qualitative data. And also they did then some follow-up interviews with players and tried to build some early player persona of who would be the audience. And
actually, I was actually going to ask that as you were kind of talking about this. do you guys typically find, and I've heard different ways of going about doing this, but I've often heard that you want to design a game for an audience. So do you kind of try to pick the audience before going through like these design? I know you weren't quite part of the team, but like, do you try to pick the audience before going through the design themes where it's like, okay, I know that this is the audience of players and these are the types of things that they like, or, I've got some, I'm gonna say woman because probably most of your audience is female. So, do I have some woman in mind where like I've talked to her really closely and I know what shows she likes and books she reads and things like that? Or is it more of just like a trend? What do I hear is going on?
I think it's a bit of a dance. So you first have this theme that sparks emotions, then you try to understand who's actually the audience, then you have an early picture of who they are, then you try to make the game features and the theme and the flow suitable to their needs, then you reevaluate, okay, who's the audience now? And I think it's constant. I think it starts at the very first step and it's still continuing as of now, because even though they had a very clear picture in mind at the time when they then finished the validation release, I think since then it still evolved more and more. And also they didn't have all the knowledge about this, because like you always have like a working hypothesis. Would somebody that enjoys a choices game enjoy a game with story and match 3, right?
Yeah.
So these are some open questions that we keep carrying with us, although we know that probably a woman who plays our game wants to take agency, right? So a lot of our game evolves around player agency, taking agency, making choices, not throwing things at the player, but rather guide them and give them the agency to choose things like who do you romance and what actions do you make in the match 3. So we still try to give this kind of room to explore. And I think there were some misleading assumptions made early on where, okay, when you say that you want to give agency to the player, they also like challenge. So there are these like, you associate traits with certain design pillars, traits of the character, and it's not necessarily true. So somebody that wants agency doesn't want a constant challenge, because in this year we're in relaxation space, right? Our competitors are Netflix, because we are trying to sell interesting and deeper stories. And so the person doesn't always want to be hyper focused and challenged in the match 3. Mm-hmm. And so these kind of things we learn throughout the process of soft launch.
Very interesting. Yeah, I know. Did you guys use 12 traits at all through the process to like deeply understand your players? And it seems like the Switchcraft audience, like there could be a decent amount of overlap between like a Pearl's Peril or, June's Journey a little bit. So like you guys probably already intimately know the audience as you've been running these games and working with these players. I think, Wooga, if anyone that's listening wants to know how to do community management and like how to engage with the community, like just join the Facebook groups for, those 2 games. Like you guys do an amazing job. Okay. Well, let's continue a little bit. Tell me a little bit about the soft launch. Like, when did you launch, and how long did it go for?
We started a more technical soft launch, I think, like many companies do, in July 2020. And back then, we actually had technically, I think, a quite stable game. So besides some loading time optimizations, I think we never had huge amount of crashes or anything. But we saw that there's an issue in the funnel. very early. So we weren't happy with the funnel numbers. We started in the Philippines, and when you have a game that's so much narrative, it's really key that the audience also speaks English well enough. So we didn't have many countries to choose from in the tier 3 category to do the technical soft launch. So we started with Philippines, but because everyone is doing this, especially in match 3 is so thought about, so everyone wants to get these users. It was actually already a challenge in Philippines, and then we opened to India, and that was much easier. And no wonder there was lots of amount of players there. So our real learnings we then generated in India, and in about September we started the first country, I think Canada, and we again saw that, because we didn't know, is this funnel issue now Philippines, India specific, or would we see the same picture in a tier 1 country? So we started Canada, and we said, yes, still an issue. So we actually that was the time when the numbers really looked bad, and everyone had 100% idea of what's wrong with the game. So I think if you could have asked 100 people in the company, you would have gotten 100 opinions of what's wrong with the game. And we had this constant input of everyone, do this, do that. I actually felt a bit like Hodor.
Hold the door.
All the messages a bit away from the team, so that they get some time and space and understand the problem and analyze what's happening. And I think that's also one part that I wanted to mention, that in the end, of course, the product is very important, but the team even more so. So I think a lot of the trust that we had throughout the process was because of the team and its strengths and its ability to analyze the problems and to go through difficult times and as a unit, right? So behind this door that I tried to keep closed for a moment, there wasn't fighting and arguing. There was really okay, let's sit down. Let's see what's happening here. Let us play the game. What kind of insights can we generate to make the next bigger move? What can we do in the meantime until we know what's broken, to get the meaningful learnings before everything has changed that we want to change? And so we sat down, we made a plan, and it actually took us until February. So in January, we launched the big update on the first time user experience. And we started then getting, again, a cohort of users in February. And that's when the early numbers looked so much better already. And that's where suddenly everyone was like, hey, cool, you did the right thing. And in the time in between, I actually did a lot of audience research with Playtest Cloud, with Wooga's internal surveys. We did a lot of iterative testing. And when we analyzed the feedback, we realized that especially in the company, there was very, very bad reviews from male colleagues. So you had the male colleagues and their ratings on the one hand, and the female colleagues on the other hand. It was a difference between day and night, how they rated the game. And so we went deeper into understanding, of course, both sides, because just because it's different gender doesn't mean that they're less valid concerns. But we tried to understand it better, and we also did this extensive studies on Playtest Cloud, and we actually looked at second by second experience for the FTUE. We mapped down the emotions and the feelings people have when they go through different sequences of the story, and that was a very tedious process. And most of the team members were actually also involved in that, because we had players play the game over several days sometimes and had to analyze these videos. But it was really worth it. We had to reinvent some of the methods that we can use to understand, okay, what is this emotion that they're showing there? The worst thing that you can have in a story-driven game is no emotions. If they just click through it and read, If they're like, even bad reactions are good reactions because they're memorable. Like even if they say, ooh, oh, shock, whatever, this is really great because it means that they're engaging with the content that you're providing to them. And through understanding what content is exciting, we actually iterated on our F2E several times. So that was the first big revamp, but we still knew those some areas we couldn't tackle yet in the first version. So we went all together in 4 iterations through the F2E work.
Okay, I have like 100 questions, but let's loop back to something that I think is a common thing that I see at places, and even at studios that I'm working with or advising. So you've got a game that's out there and it's not working, or you don't have the metrics where you want them to be, right? And yeah, everyone's got an idea of why it's not working or what feature is missing or like what the problem is. How did you guys go through the list of problems so that you were able to identify what the right, or maybe like the real problems were? Like would you mind sharing, like, hey, here are some of the things that people thought were wrong, and here's what actually ended up being wrong?
So first of all, I think the process was for us, I think the most important step was not forcing yourself to figure out the problem and find a solution right now. Mm-hmm. So being okay with it will take us some time, right? And making sure that everyone understands that you can't fix a big fundamental issue from one day to the other, and not knowing the answer right now doesn't mean that you won't know it in the future, right? So I think just being okay with, okay, this is now a process, and we will try to not waste time and resources in between, because we still knew, like, we had a full feature scope of things that we knew the game has to have at global launch, so our devs could continue with a task and so on. And so being okay with right now, it's about understanding, it's about us sorting through, and then trying to really get information from different channels. As I said, qualitative data through research, play the game yourself. So like the entire leads team tested the game, played the game, and we kind of brainstormed all the things that we feel is wrong. Then we have a channel that's accessible for the entire team, where we get all the reviews. Like every review that we get in directly gets to this channel, and people are reading it and interacting with every review that we get for the game. So back then we already got the reviews. And so we could filter what are common requests. We did the playtest cloud studies, and we looked at the data, we looked at the dashboards, we looked at exactly where is the churn, which KPIs are the problem, when does it start to go down. We analyzed, like, by data every minute of the gameplay in the funnel, and we analyzed our loading. Like, we went, like, what are all the issues and what are evidences that could support one or the other issue, right? And then we kind of as a team aligned, okay, these are the top 3 things we need to tackle, and this is the number 1 thing, and let's focus. And then for like 1 month, the entire team just focused on the F2E and said, okay, here we can make the art prettier, there we can take this out, here we can improve the flow, here we can improve the loading times, right? So the entire team had one mission. They understood this is a problem, this is how we can fix it. And it was like, once everything was in place and people understood the problem and understood where we're going, it was like magic just watching the team, how they really executed on this. But it really starts with being okay that this is the process, and it's okay to not be successful all the time. It's an opportunity to learn, and we should really learn and not just assume. Like, if you go from, okay, 3 people said it's this, let's fix this, right? And if you have like a holistic view like this, of course, we knew that some of the early emotions weren't great and the onboarding wasn't great. But also the level designers, they saw, okay, when I actually look at what people do in the match 3, we see how we can still improve the match 3 levels, right? And so everyone tried to do on their end what they're able to do, and really all these different pieces came together really well in the end. So I think.
Yeah. So tell me, like, so you released this kind of first major change in January. What were some of the big things that you guys ended up changing for that release?
So our content is episodic. We call it task, chapter, and book. And the tasks, like one chapter has approximately 24 tasks. And we started the book with the book 1 was a trailer, and then you had this 24 tasks. And people didn't really understand what is episodic content. This is like weird concept for a game. And we saw that, like, we tried to start the game with the like, boom, your best friend is missing, go look for her. Right? That was like the intro. And people were like, who's this person? Why do I care about her? Like, it's the character's best
She's your
friend.
best friend, come on.
And who am I, and who's she? And she, like, and then you talk to other people about her, and other people have different opinions about her. She's your best friend, but other people are like, oh, she was mentally ill anyways, right? So they didn't get a good picture of this friend, and so they felt not really attached to her and didn't know why they should follow after her. And so we basically put this book 1 as in place. We also optimized it later on. That was a follow-up task, but we added an entire chapter 0 basically, that gives players a bit of time to get to know their best friend, and that kind of leads a bit up to this big boom that she's gone. And we put some more emotions into it, right? So we talk a bit about the friendship and the mental problems that her best friend has. And I think in these times where people are struggling, these kind of themes also resonate well with them, and they feel more talked to than somebody's talking about something, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think of a lot of books that, you open up the first page and it like throws you right into the action, and it seems like that's what you guys tried to do. But there are some books that maybe take that chapter to kind of set the tone a little bit more of like who you are and stuff. It sounds like that's what you guys ended up doing, which added that cohesion. Okay, that's super cool.
Also, it helped us, like, because the chapter 0 was designed to be more on the point tasks. We added like these little interactions that we saw are really fun for the players early on. We made the choices really more meaningful. We transport the concept of this is a very short chapter and there are more chapters to come, and you get a reward at the end of, like, we also used like common sense game design patterns of like giving somebody an onboarding experience. I think this is something that we also implemented, and but overall the visual quality improved. As I said, the match 3 gameplay, it's a holistic thing, but it's really always coming back to what are the emotions and how does the player feel when they interact with this, right?
That actually leads me to my next question, which was, you did this second by second emotion analysis of these playtests, which I'm sure people are listening to and they're just like cringing, like, I don't want to have to do that. But what emotions were you trying to elicit, especially in the first time user experience? Like, yeah, what were you trying to have your players feel?
So there are like always these beats that you want to have, especially at the end of the task. You want to have a beat that makes them, oh, now I want to know what's coming next, right? And you want them to just react. Like sometimes it's the just making a noise while you read, like, ooh, this is already a reaction where you're like, okay, the person cares somehow, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like we want them to constantly sit in their chair and like be scared. It's more like there should be something interesting. They should start asking questions like, oh, who's that hot guy, right? And why is he so pissed at me? So you want to have like these kind of reactions because then you understand that they will be memorable, right? They will remember. And I think that's like we also saw the progress. We made like little mini clips of how people interacted with the game through the different stages. And there were some that were so exciting. Like we could really watch these videos on Playtest Cloud endlessly because it was so fun of how they like tried to speak for the characters, tried to imitate their voices. Yeah. And like they had really fun also making the choices like, oh, there's a task where they could just answer tomato. And they were like, oh, I want to click tomato, but I want to do the right thing. So I want to be the character. So this kind of excitement and interest, this is something that we wanted to create.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, before I continue back on, I had one kind of final question that you prompted. So you talk about the importance of team, and I couldn't agree more. Like, you know, people are like, Tom, you do so much. And really, it's not me. It's like the team doing everything. So, you know, within this concept of a team, you know, can you tell me a little bit about your team size when you guys were in this phase? Like, how many devs did you have, game designers? Like, what did that team look like to be able to, you know, build the game and to iterate on it in this time period?
I think for the most time, after we got through the production gate, we were around 25 to, at the end, I think 35 people. Cool. We have every discipline has a lead. So we have a lead artist, a lead product manager, lead designer, a lead writer, and lead engineer. And we also have a marketing manager who's within the leads group. And they work with their teams, and the leads are trying to be always aligned on, okay, this is where we're going, this is what we're trying to achieve. And the team itself, I think engineers, we were 6 to 7 engineers. And I think the biggest part of the team, about 50%, was always content production, so only story. We had initially, I think, 4 writers. Now we have 7. So quite a big writing team with lots of experience, and yeah, great mix of people. And I think one part of the success in this team was that everyone is very open-minded to different kind of people, because we are all so different. Like, I think we are alone in our team over 12 nationalities. We have all kinds of genders represented. We have not yet quite a healthy balance in all the representations. So it's still majority male, but we have in every discipline female representatives. And except for engineering, unfortunately, because Wooga tried to put our female engineers more in one team than across the teams, because it's more fun for women to also work with other women sometimes. Yeah. We have also very diverse needs in the team, like we're very neurodiverse. We talk openly about the different needs. And I think this really created early on a high level of trust between the team members, because it's okay to be different and it's okay to talk about your needs. And I think this is also shown in the game. Like, Switchcraft has a very diverse cast, and not in the sense that we like sat down, okay, we need to have this portion and this portion. It's more like, I think we're trying to tell our story somehow. And because we have so diverse backgrounds, we just are able to talk from certain perspectives in a very natural way, and how it is. Like, I don't know, a person in a wheelchair also has a sex life, right? And this is just normal. It's not something special that you need to like scream out there, or yeah, it's just some examples, but as a team, it was a great effort, and these different perspectives helped also to look at the problems, of course.
Yeah. So let's actually talk a little bit about Switchcraft, because we probably should have done this at the beginning, but I'm apparently disorganized in my brain. Let's talk about this whole idea. I feel like most people, at least had you said like a year or two ago, would have said like match 3, like don't even touch it, like it's over, you'll never get in. And then we saw Royal Match come in and just start to dominate, and then we saw Switchcraft launch, and like you guys are doing really well. So let's talk about jumping into this red ocean of match 3. What is Switchcraft exactly? Like, what was the vision, and kind of take me through, the story, the characters, those kind of things.
So Switchcraft is trying to be a more innovative take on match 3. Match 3 has been very focused on challenging the player and getting them hyper engaged with all the events and everything. And we did see players trying to more switch off when they play games as well. And not every type of match 3 allows for this very well. So we tried to create a game. It's a story-driven match 3 game. It has an interactive story, and set in a mysterious school for witches. And this theme and this setting creates more relaxed, fantastical atmosphere where people can truly switch off and like forget about their daily conundrums. They can play the levels to relax, like we designed the sounds to be relaxing. We designed the pacing to be relaxing, so that you really have like me time and quality time, right? It's not like this, I do random things. It all has a meaning, because we themed the match 3 in a meditation sense, because that's what you're doing. Like you meditate, you take your mind off the daily stuff, and you just enjoy yourself for a moment. And we also try to add a bit of like reflection with the story, right? The characters, as I said, they represent us, but they also reflect what's happening in the society. And the witchcraft is not any witchcraft. It's not Harry Potter witchcraft. It's the Wicca witchcraft. And the Wicca witchcraft is very close to earth, to nature, to interacting with everything in the more spiritual and healthy way. And this is something that I think is just very on top of the minds of young women at the moment, right? How do they place themselves in the environment in a healthy and a sustainable way? And I think this is what Switchcraft is trying to achieve. And we didn't see any game actually aiming for this yet, even though the match 3 space is very sought after, and it's very competitive. I sometimes feel insane that we're even trying, but the feedback from the audience and the reviews that we're reading kind of carried us through the process, because so many people say this game is my new favorite game. This is the best match 3 I've played. This is like exactly what I've been looking for. Why can't more developers look for my needs, right? Why is this the only gem that I find that's so inclusive and LGBTQ friendly? And so we think that we have found something there, and still it's a huge struggle. So I won't lie, it has not always looked good for us, and we are still trying to really find more growth, hopefully in next year. It's a bit insane, but we believe that we have this raw gem there. And I talk about raw gems to my team a lot, because if you have something that looks bad and you try to fix it in various different ways, and you don't see any kind of reaction of the KPIs, then you just have a game. But if you change something and you see the uplift, that means you might have this raw gem that you just need to polish and work with to actually make it shine. And yeah, we have now had several updates where we really saw uplift in various KPIs that made me believe like, okay, we might have the raw gem here. We just need to work even a little harder in the next year.
Yeah, I mean, within match 3, I feel like you really have to have, expertise, and the level design needs to be just like so spot on. And to monetize well, you've got to like end on those moments. And maybe you guys monetize differently, but most match 3s, the +5 moves is the key monetization moment, right? And so you've got to design the level so that consistently players fail with the 2 bombs really close to each other, and they're like, I worked so hard and I finally get that moment and I just want to pay a little bit right now, and then I can have the pleasure of blowing everything away and beating the level that I worked on. I earned this and I deserve it. So let's talk about like match 3 and stuff. Like I know that Wooga has done a little bit in the past, but historically you guys have done more like hidden object type stuff. So did you guys have a match 3 engine? Did you build something by scratch? Did you try to hire a bunch of people? Or like, what did that process look like?
It's funny that you say that we were historically a hidden object company. We were not a hidden object company. I think Wooga was a matching and simulation company in the past. So we started off with Monster World. I don't know if you remember this. It was a huge simulation game. Then we had, I think one of the next hit games that we have was a bubble shooter. It was called Bubble Island. Then we had Diamond Dash, which was also a more matching mechanic, but a dash mechanic. We had Tropicats, which was a match game, and we had many more prototypes that we killed in the process. So I think the hidden object was really just one studio, one tiny entity within Wooga. It was called Adventure Studio back then, which was also my cradle where I was raised as a PM, right? So I came from the Adventure Studio.
Yep.
That's kind of hidden object somewhere, but many other mechanics and many other experiences on the other hand. And I have the honor to work with Christopher as a lead designer, who is at Wooga as employee number 1. I think he was the first intern hired next to the founders.
Wow.
And he worked on Diamond Dash back then. He worked probably even on Bubble Island. He worked on Copycat, so he comes with lots of match 3 experience. And through the other, we also even had a Futurama game, which was a matching game at some point. We got really experienced level designers out of these projects and game designers. And we started the puzzle engine that we work with already with those projects. We have it set up so that different teams can use it in the end. So this is like,
were you guys able to take and kind of copy over any of those levels that worked already, or did you have to kind of rewrite everything from scratch?
No, we had to, the levels were redone from scratch because we identified specific issues with how levels were set up, for example, in Tropicats. And also, I forgot a big game, Jelly Splash. I don't know if you know Jelly Splash, but it was like a line drawing similar to Best Fiends mechanic. So for every game, the level dynamics were very different. And so we had to come up with our way. And our initial direction was also very different from it was back today, what it is today. So we revisited all design pillars for match 3 levels, and I think we touched every level many times, at least 10 times, I would say. So I think the level design team is doing an amazing job and really iterating, taking team feedback, iterating, looking at the data, iterating. So it's a lot of work, and we even I think one of the biggest projects after the F2E was reshuffling all the objectives and blockers that we introduced in the game, because we saw that especially in the beginning of the game, the cognitive load of the player was quite high, because we tried to show them the most innovative mechanic early on in the match 3, plus the story, plus the new type of game, right? So I think we asked too much of the player early on. So we took a step back a little bit with the match 3, try to make it fun, but not as cognitive heavy for the player. And so this entire reshuffling of all the mechanics, because you also have this pace of difficulty, you can't just put the levels from 2 to 50 to suddenly 250, right? You can't just move that, because there's also like a learning curve that you want to establish. So over the course of, I think, 4 months, we reshuffled all the levels completely, reworked them, iterated them again. So constant work.
Do you guys utilize any sort of mechanic where you have like multiple versions of a level, or you can make the levels like easier? Like I swear that they do this in Royal Match. I don't know for sure, but like if I played a level 20 times and I failed on like the 20th time, they'll like just give me this like almost freebie on the level, or maybe I just get lucky or something, but then I like finally beat it. And I think they do that because if they realize that a player gets stuck at this level eternally, they're just going to churn out and stop playing the game. So, do you guys utilize anything like that?
We have a dream of building like this golden path for a player, that everyone gets exactly the experience that they want. I think in reality, the match 3 engine is a huge luck game. Right? You end up how you end up. Yep. And of course, we are thinking about how we can control this better. But in our game, what we see is that lots of players actually don't want to play a level more than once. So those players that pay, they pay after one fail already, because they just want to continue in the story. Yeah. And it feels sometimes like they don't even care if they buy then again 5 moves or 5, like they just want to finish the level, they don't want to play it again. Yeah. And so investing too much time into like what happens when you replay the level after 10 times seems a bit senseless right now. Yeah. But it's definitely a topic that we look into.
That makes sense. Okay, jump back up a little bit. Like, why even try to launch a casual match 3? Like, why aren't we playing another, merge story driven game?
I think, again, the match 3 market is just so big and so one-sided. So we just saw the opportunity there. I think you had the podcast about Love and Pies. And he said that the market, they want to grow the market, and that's something that we try to do with Hidden Object as well. But there's a limitation to how much you can grow a market and how fast you can grow the market. And there's so much happening in the merge area right now that we just felt like we have zero expertise in Wooga with merge games. Like getting into it and doing it right is even a bigger gamble than looking for this hole in this really huge match 3 market and see what are the audiences there that are underserved, and try to get maybe a small chunk from a huge pie. Rather trying to get a big chunk from a very small pie, right? So that was kind of the strategic decision behind it. Maybe again, still insane, because of course the competition is fierce, but the monetization aspect just works. So you don't really need to have 1,000 layers on top of a match 3 to monetize. And we don't want to monetize the story. For us, the story is the reward. It's something that players enjoy and consume. And we didn't want to have like an episode type of game or choices type of game where you have to pay for the interesting content. And then the best match of a good monetizing core was the best to choose this kind of match 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tell me a little bit about like the biggest challenges you guys faced.
I think that's the biggest challenge. I mean, the market, the competition, the user acquisition. We had IDFA drop upon us right in between before we globally launched. The keeping the team motivated, besides maybe some not so good periods, right? So when you fail, when you don't see the results that you wanted to see, this is a constant challenge, and really always checking your own sanity. Does this still make sense what we're trying to achieve here? I think in this very competitive market, but I think it would be the same even if we would have not a match 3 game, right? I think any game developer right now is struggling, and even the big companies that have huge hit games, they struggle to release the next hit game and to actually grow it, even though they're great games, right? So some of the games that we see from big developers are really fun. They still can't scale it to the point. Also, Homescapes doesn't have the same high KPIs as a Gardenscapes. So it's, you know, creating a hit game is not really science. It's also a huge portion of luck.
Yeah.
And I can say I have the best team behind me, and still, let's see if we still talk about the same game next year or in 3 years, right? Because it's really still a huge effort, and casual games is not the fun space that it used to be when I joined.
So talk to me a little bit about, I mean, during the soft launch, you were in 3, like tier 1 markets, and I'm sure you had to have pretty decent sized campaigns running continuously, especially if you wanted to actually have, decent data on your KPIs, to say nothing about monetization KPIs, where you even need more players. That was probably a pretty pricey endeavor. And you've got this big team, also probably pretty pricey, based in Berlin and stuff. What sort of support did you guys have from, Wooga and Playtika to like have these ongoing like UA tests that were probably more costly than if you could be running them in like, India or whatnot going on? And maybe for a team that doesn't have a lot of runway for, like a startup or something like that, like, would you recommend for a story driven game that like you have to be in a tier 1 market to get this feedback, or, could you have done it differently?
So also, I mean, having Wooga and Playtika in the back is definitely helpful in terms of resources. But it's not like that we were like, oh, for sure, get us 1,000 new users per day in 3 markets. We also didn't want to do that because we wanted to spend where it makes sense. And when I talked about this huge FTUE revamp, we told the marketing and UA team, don't get users for us. If you want to test something and you think you can learn something, fine, but don't get users for us. We will right now not look at the data. We're just closed up and focused on shipping an update. Yeah. And we were fine with them stopping the campaigns. And then at another time, we were like, okay, right now we need any type of user. Don't look for quality. Any type of user is fine right now, because we just want to test the FTUE. And for this, we don't need great users, right? And at another time, we were like, can we really invest profitably into this game? So let's try to imitate business as usual on the UA side, and try to really scale up campaigns and focus campaigns and optimize campaigns. And so we went through these different phases. And I think in another studio, I would probably ensure that there's some resource to really test the water. So maybe we tried it for a month. Maybe the studio can try it for a week to do business as usual, because it can be a difference between day and night if you really try to like get any user or quality users into your game. And you need to do these learnings early, and you need to, in this fierce competition, you need to come with the funds to really test it. Otherwise, it may be even more expensive to keep any team for too long and try to globally launch it. Like if you want to do some global launch campaigns, they are also expensive. Maybe you're wasting more money not knowing what happens actually when you not tested before, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Um, let's talk a little bit about player feedback, because it sounds like you guys used this very early and you used multiple channels and spent a lot of time, talking to players. Um, what sort of, you know, and I hear a lot of people, especially related to like surveys and stuff, and being like, oh, you can't trust survey data. Like players don't actually know what you want. You've got to, if you ask them, they're going to say, oh, I want a faster horse, but really they need a car. So, what types of questions did you guys ask in surveys, and how did you glean useful information from, these types of things?
Mm, working with experts in the field is always helpful. So I would call our publishing department, first of all, an expert in this, because they also frequently run surveys on Parallel Engine Journey, as you said. They're like really connected there with the audience, and they have a good feeling for the audience. So involving them is key. Then don't just trust one source of information. So we would run sometimes the same survey with different tools and audiences just to validate. So for example, as I said, initially the male colleagues didn't really like the game. They gave us really poor ratings. And so we started having always some male respondents in the surveys as well, to understand, is this really an audience that just doesn't like us, or is it not their genre, or what's happening here? And what we saw was that men really enjoy stories. So in all the surveys, we thought we're making a game for women only, and but our key selling point, the story, is also attractive to men.
Yeah.
And when we saw this in one survey, we validated it with another survey and with another tool and agency, and we saw it everywhere. And at first, again, didn't make sense, because again, our male colleagues were so critical. But as we refined the game, refined the match 3 experience, refined the story, when we globally launched, I would say we got almost 50% reviews from players with male names, right? You never know who's behind it.
Yeah.
But we suddenly had all kinds of Johns and Jacks writing amazing reviews for Switchcraft. And I'm like,
Wow.
that's interesting. Like, by trying to be better and getting better KPIs, we also managed to capture some kind of male audience for us. I won't say that we have 50-50 split in the audience, but we do have a significant amount of men that really play the game. And we also see this now reflected. At Wooga, we have like a channel, a public channel for Switchcraft, where everyone can post us any type of feedback, bug reports, things they like, things that they don't like. And we have a huge engagement with my colleagues in posting updates and reflect on their experience with the story, like how they like one character but don't like another character. So this was an interesting journey, and for us, really like using multiple channels, validating your findings, run a survey again. We work with Quantic Foundry for an in-game survey. How do you phrase the questions in a way that they are
not leading. Yeah.
not leading. We phrase things like, do you want to have more or less of, or significant less of this part of the game? We try to also have open questions, like a constant question that I'm asking is like, what are the things that you truly enjoy about this game, and what are the things that you wish would be better, or that you didn't enjoy? So not even asking a specific question, but having open questions like this helped us. And just give them the experience. So we had one particular topic that was dividing us in the team. We try to also sometimes create some edgy content. And early on, there was like one part of the team that said, oh, the writers shouldn't put so many assholes and other swear words into the story. This is putting me off. I don't want to read this. And then the other ones were like, but that's the character, right? That's the tone of this character. He is an edgy character. Yeah. And it wouldn't be this character if he wouldn't swear all the time. And so we discussed what should be the tonality. And then we took a scene from the game and we built it twice. So once with the original tonality and once with a tuned down tonality with less swear words. And we ran a survey where they had to watch a video of the scene. And then we asked different types of feedback questions and also open questions. And we didn't ask about the tonality in the survey. Like we didn't ask if this is the issue. The survey was structured in a way that they think about something else.
Yeah.
And then we just analyzed how many players from their own, like in the open questions, said that it was too much swearing. And so we could see then by age group how this may be off-putting for different players. So the older they got, the more they were put off by the swearing and the more often they mentioned it on themselves. And then we could also see how many players say that they don't like the art style. And then we looked at the recommendations before watching the video, just looking at the static banner, and then after watching the video. And those people that didn't like the sounds or didn't like that there are no sounds or that didn't like the art, their recommendation score didn't drop as much as those players that didn't like the swear words. So even though there were two groups that complained about something, the one group that complained actually felt that this had a very negative impression for the brand and for the product that they're looking at. And so this made us realize that, okay, we should put some boundaries in place. And then we went through all the swear words that you can possibly have and reflect those that are okay to use sometimes, infrequently. This can be a more common swear word. So that was a fun exercise from a product standard
That's
point
really
of view.
cool.
But it was also a good way to align the writing and the other team members around, like, what's the tonality that we're going for and why. Yeah,
that's great. So I have kind of one topic left, and it's a little bit of a big one, but and that really is diversity. So, tell me about how you guys approach diversity, why you did it, and how you kind of tried to add that into Switchcraft.
Yeah, I think I touched upon it a little bit earlier. I think nobody ever sat down and said, we want to achieve a certain diversity in the game. It's more, we want to create emotions and we want to write about things that we as a team care about. And so we naturally put parts of who we are into the game. And since we are a very diverse team, so again, we are from 12 different countries, we have every gender represented, we have LGBTQ plus representatives, we are neurodiverse, some have visible or invisible disabilities. So in the team, we already have a very diverse background, and we try to think about the characters, like, why is this character white? Why is this character black? It's like, does this matter for them? Do we have somebody that's representing this type? We have this character in a wheelchair who's adorable. She's so strong. She's one of the strongest and wittiest characters in the game, and she also has her love affair there, and like, she's really somebody that's key to this some parts of the story, and she's really great. And it was so hard to use our story engine to display her well, because she's shorter than everyone else. And we had to find solutions for shorter characters, because we also have kids as characters in the game. And with the narrative boxes on top, like, how do you have them not just pick up?
Yeah.
We have had to some kind of find solutions for this. And another team might have said, okay, this is taking us too much time, right? We need to focus, we need to deliver the content, we need to deliver the story. And we were like, no, this is the character, and we have to make it work for her and for anyone else who is shorter, or, this is something that came just so natural, because nobody wanted to sacrifice this kind of diversity that we were going for. And yeah, I think we, like, somebody asked me once, why don't you have the full black main character? And the answer is, well, we don't have, like, we have lots of mixed race people in the team. Like, we have people with African background, but they grew up in the West, right? And how should they write the story of a true black character, right? And so I think this is something that was more like a natural process of extending what the team already is representing into the game. And we then actually afterwards, after we heard from so many players that they said, well, this game is so much representing me and I feel so great about playing this because it's really good representation of diversity. We asked for a study. So we looked with Mavic into this, and we analyzed the top 50 casual puzzle games. And we looked at the characters that they use for their marketing materials. We saw that only 20% of the main characters were BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, or people of color, and only 4% of the main cast. So that was pretty low for us. And we thought, okay, why are they not doing this so much? But I think it's just a conversation that we need to start. And I think this happened also for TV, for other types of media, where we saw that there's just an underrepresentation, and where for hopefully the next games companies are doing, they look more into this, okay, how do we have a more natural representation, because the world is not just white, right? And it's not just straight, and it's not just enabled in everything, and it's not perfect, right? And so I think it was an ambition early on that we don't want to recreate a plastic world that makes people feel bad, because we are a joyful place. We want to be relaxed, and we want people to feel good about themselves. And I think their representation is key, of course, as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I know we're coming to the end of our time here. So, this is the Mastering Retention podcast, of course. So I always like to ask, what's one tip or trick or insight you found towards keeping players, engaged in your game for longer? How do you keep them around?
I think the key part, and that's something that I also tried to emphasize on, is these emotions. So emotions are making any type of media memorable. Emotions will make people talk about your product, your game, and they also connect them emotionally with what's happening in the game. So even if there's no story in your game, your game can create emotions. A funny example I find is the butler in the Gardenscapes, when he's like doing the slow clap. And most people I know are completely annoyed by him, but this annoying emotion still makes it very memorable, right? And so it's not about just positive emotions, it's emotions itself in any form or shape really make you memorable, and in that sense will make players spend more time with your product if there are emotions. And don't be afraid of failing. So I think the retention part is the hardest part. I think once you have a retaining game, monetizing it is not that difficult, but the retention is the hardest part. And even if it may not look great in the beginning, sit down, analyze the problems, and be patient with yourself and finding the right solutions. So don't give up too early.
I love it. Well, Annelie, this has been so great. I really appreciate you joining me today. If people do have, questions, or they want to learn more about Wooga or whatnot, like, is there a good way for them to get in contact with you?
I think the best way is over LinkedIn. So you find my profile under Annelie Biernat. And I think I'm not the master in all the crafts that I talked about, but if I can connect you with anyone in my team or from Wooga, I will also try to be of help. And we have lots of open jobs, of course.
Check them out. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye.